Hello, everybody. This is Bob Samuels from Tech Connector. We're a B2B lead gen solution provider. I'm also a co-host of today's show. It's a great opportunity to introduce you to some of my favorite marketers as we talk about ABM, ABX, and the effect of AI, which is a super hot topic these days. So thank you for joining us. If everybody can, and then I'll give a fun fact. Fun fact about me is that I'm a fairly recent grandfather and an avid pickleball player. So those are my big loves these days besides ABX. So if we go around the room, Jeff, if you can do a little introduction and fun fact.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Pedowitz. I'm president and CEO of the Pedowitz Group. As a fun fact, my kids and my wife learned that I actually can cook. So I was kind of holding out on everybody all these years, but yeah, I've really been able to pick it up over the last couple of months and made a lot of good recipes. So everyone's excited.
Thank you. Leslie?
Or Leslie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Allure. I'm the Global Vice President of Growth Marketing at Avanti. We're an IT software company, and I have to apologize in advance for my voice. It's only just returned to me. I lost my voice for 6 whole days, like nothing. So I'm not sure if that's a fun fact, but here's one. I cannot play pickleball, but I would love to learn how. And I actually write recipes as a hobby.
All right, we can collaborate.
Thank you, Leslie. John?
Hey folks, John Miller, currently the CMO at Demandbase. I've been a marketing entrepreneur. I joined Demandbase when we merged Engagio, the company I was the co-founder and CEO at, with Demandbase. Before that, I was a co-founder at Marketo, so long time in sort of the MarTech space. My fun fact is I have become sort of known for telling dad jokes in my presentations. So I'll try off a new one for everybody today, which is, okay, so I had a sweater and it had too much static electricity on it, so I decided to return it. The good thing is they gave me a new one free of charge.
Yes, all right.
I love science joke.
Thank you,
The intersection of dad jokes with some science is my favorite.
Oh, good.
That's tough to beat. Hey everyone, I'm Brian Law. I'm the CMO at ZoomInfo. Bob, good to know you're an expert. We actually have a team outing in a week that's going to be pickleball, and I'm hoping not to embarrass myself. In terms of fun fact, maybe something that's just top of mind is we launched our first brand campaign this week at ZoomInfo. So something I'm really excited about having done.
Yay. Thank you, Brian. All right, I'm going to start off with a quick poll just to see where people are at as far as that acclimation to this whole AI thing and introducing that to your marketing efforts. So if you can be prepared, go ahead and start answering these questions, and then I'll hand over to Jeff and go ahead and start the panel questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. So today, we were really fascinated about coming up with this topic. ABX has been very popular for the last few years. And of course, all 3 of these panelists have had a lot to do with that. But for many marketers, ABX can still be elusive. And now as AI takes the world by storm, we thought it would be really good to explore that intersection of how can AI be used by marketers to improve their ABX initiatives. So for today, we're going to ask our panelists a set of questions in 4 major areas, specifically related to AI and ABX. The first is going to be around targeting and messaging. The second is going to be around segmentation. The third will be around analytics and performance. And then the fourth one will be around data management. And then in between each section, Bob will throw up a poll just to kind of see where the audience is. So let's get started with targeting and messaging. And we'll start off with you, John. How can AI improve targeting and messaging for an actual ABX strategy?
Yeah, so when we say, let's start by defining. So like when I hear targeting, what I really mean is, and I think our definition that we had here is, which accounts should we pursue and which members of the buying committee should we pursue? So, for me, I always like to fall on what I call the FIRE acronym for targeting. FIRE, F stands for fit, I for intent, R for relationship, and E for engagement. And I think AI plays a really big role, especially in those first 2. Like does this look like my best accounts? That's a classic look-like model. And the I intent, kind of who's showing intent. I mean, all the intent providers use AI to kind of get the data. Now, you did also ask about kind of not just the accounts, but which, members of the buying committee we should focus on. This is an area I've been really interested in recently because we all know, that the buying group is really the sort of the core object, even more than the lead or the account. But it's been really hard for salespeople or marketers to identify the right members of the buying group. And I think that AI is the key thing that can unlock that, right? If we can actually look at our prior opportunities and see who are the people and the members that have been associated with that opportunity, we can learn what personas tend to be associated with that kind of opportunity. And then AI can help us find more people that look like those at new accounts.
Good. Leslie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that John just said, and I would take it a step further and say that I also think about AI in the context of being able to really activate in against those target accounts, because not all of your target accounts are going to be in market for what you have to sell at any given time. So using tools that help you understand, okay, who's showing signs that they're actually in market to buy the thing that I'm selling right now, and being able to precisely funnel your marketing activities, particularly your paid media dollars, against those will really help you with, cost management, but also create great customer experiences. And I'm hoping to see more capabilities of AI and human use of AI in marketing that allow us to get even more precise, not just with the targeting side of things, but also the message that you deliver in a dynamic and bespoke way.
And Brian.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, two things I might start with. So, I mean, at the end of the day, AI, whether it's sort of more predictive or generative AI, I think it allows you to do three things. One, it sort of lets you connect the dots because it can just process like massive amounts of information that we as individuals can't do. And so that's really important. It lets you automate sort of predictive tasks. So just sort of get busy work out of the way, and then it potentially allows you to personalize at scale. So that's sort of like the framing that I would use. And then I would say foundationally, in order for AI to work, you have to feel really, really comfortable with the data that you're using, because if you do those things on bad data, you're just going to be doing a lot more ineffectively. And so relative to the targeting piece, I think in many ways, what you just heard from Leslie and John, but sort of the addition that I would make is, how do you leverage all that data real time in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do before, so that you understand who to go after, what they care about, and what's the best way to connect with them? And that's sort of like the targeting piece. And then I think then you add on that with then what do you do and how do you execute against it?
So as
I
a
just
follow-up
want
to something a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
I was just going to say, I totally agree that the whole value and ability to use AI in a valuable way is predicated on good data. And the other thing that I think we all have learned, but maybe some of us need to mature our business processes around, is the fact that what constitutes good data is constantly changing, right? Buying a database once isn't going to do you any good, because that data is going to attrit, it's going to change, people change jobs, people change responsibilities, what a company is focused on changes. And so you need to also evolve your thinking around what is good data to be what is good real-time data.
Well said.
Just if we could just stay on data for 1 second longer, there's
Sure.
one idea that I'm also really excited about, is the opportunity for AI to help us get better data. Right. We always talk about good AI needs good data, but good data can come from good AI also. In particular, I think AI creates the opportunity for us to unlock data out of all the unstructured information, that's out there, whether that's, emails or tweets and, all that kind of stuff. So as we start thinking about how do we build models, to sort of predict the right targeting, a good example of that is technographic data. Where we start to learn what technologies companies have installed. The sort of classic way to do that is you just read JavaScript on the website to see what tags are there. But that doesn't tell you most technologies, right? It doesn't tell you who's on AWS versus Google Cloud. It doesn't tell you who uses Snowflake versus MongoDB and things like that. But we can start to mine that information by reading job boards and resumes and LinkedIn databases. So that's a perfect example of how AI lets us create new data, which is incredibly valuable for targeting, by mining all this unstructured information.
Maybe just two
Right.
additions to that, because I think it's a really good point. So the potential of AI to do that, I think, is really, really great. There, I think, as we all sort of have seen sort of different examples where people were testing the different sort of chatbots that were out there, or ChatGPT or whatnot, like current hallucinations of data. So where you are presented outcomes that appear to be correct, but are not, is something I think we still need to solve for. But then to John's point, I agree. I think that's really, really exciting. One of the things I think I as a marketer am most interested about now is, you always think of like your scale digital efforts as sort of great. They reach a lot of people, but they're not getting you sort of the level of information and insight that you would want. And so many times I think a lot of us are now going to like smaller events. We're getting a lot of goodness from that. But sort of the next step beyond that is sort of like one-on-one communications. And I think as marketers, we don't always leverage sort of the salesperson talking to our customer, the CSM talking to the customer. And so those conversational recordings that you can extract and leverage AI to pull the key themes and then use it to inform your sales and marketing, I think is really exciting and powerful, and exactly what John was just talking about.
So from a practical standpoint, we have powerful tools out there, whether it's Bombora or 6 Sense and Demand Base and others that can track all this behavior data. But when we look at a CRM model, it's still primarily a single contact that gets associated with an opportunity or gets added to a campaign. And so when you're trying to establish attribution in these very advanced enriched, John, you had talked about identifying the buying center better. How will AI help us get better models, better architecture within our systems? Because I know from a lot of us marketers, we're constantly chasing that holy grail and trying to get multiple people attached to the opportunity so that we can do a better analysis. How can AI help with that?
Well, there's already kind of simple ways that people are doing simply by mining the emails back and forth between a company and the meeting invites, and just like, if people are copying their coworkers on emails about the purchase, you can start to assume they're probably part of the buying committee. If they're being invited to meetings and demos, they're probably part of the buying committee. I don't know if that needs AI though, to be honest, right? I mean, that's mostly what you need is just access to that data stream. It's more than taking that data and learning the personas and finding new people that match those personas where the AI comes in, I think. But you should be doing that. You should be mining the emails and the meetings to sort of see the full buying committee, not just the one contact that happens to get attached to the opportunity.
And tools like People AI do that. Right? You can argue how much AI is involved in those types of engines, but certainly there are tools that are doing that, trying to make those correlations and adding people onto the opportunity. And we're using that today, I think, with pretty good success. Actually, in most places, there are some data privacy considerations in parts of the world worth noting.
That's a good point about the data privacy.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, sort of what's loosely being termed as AI, those capabilities have been around for quite some time. I think what sort of enhances the ability to process information at a greater scale, and then taking a lot of, as John referenced, sort of that unstructured data and doing some of the same processing that we weren't doing in the past, but like NLP and natural language processing it's not like a new thing. I think it's just getting a lot of additional attention. And then I think, John, something that you mentioned that I agree with is, in order to do the attribution, it's about getting the right data to then be pulled into your models and then leveraging those models to action against them. But sort of the actual, like, sort of the algorithm or the math behind it hasn't meaningfully changed. It's just sort of what's the data that you're pulling in.
Okay. And then why I asked the next question, if Bob, you want to throw up the poll around?
Yeah, let me just share. I'm going to share the results of the initial poll, which was where are people at as far as getting acclimated to this whole AI thing, and people are partially there. For folks, I don't know if you guys can chime in who you are. You're well equipped. That's kind of great. And then some are somewhat limited, but it's mostly people are just partially there, not quite there. Which poll do you want to try now?
The targeting messaging one.
Here's the sharing. Targeting messaging. Okay. Let me see.
I think that's still the same one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, targeting and messaging. Okay.
Can I just make a reaction to sort of the results on
Go
that
for
one?
it.
Yes.
One of the things that's sort of interesting to me, and a few of us were chatting about this in prep for the call, sort of back in sort of 2015, 2016, it seemed like the solution to ABM was like, let's throw a ton of technology at it. And it seems like in many ways, people are now saying like, let's throw a ton of AI at the problem. And I think foundationally, you still need to have a sense of like, how do you want to think about your accounts? How do you make sure you have good data? How do you make sure you have good processes in place? And then you should layer on top of that AI to then make sure that you do it more effectively. But sort of AI in and of itself, I don't think is necessarily the solution. It's a way to sort of maximize and get more value out of the things that you're trying to do.
So while we have everyone filling out this poll for targeting messaging, and then we'll move on to the next section. This phrase personalization at scale has been around for a long time now. Now, for many marketers, that could just mean dear first name and insert a couple of pieces of content fragments. But within the realm of ABX, how does AI truly help us achieve these bespoke, one-off, personalized campaigns for enterprise targets? So Leslie, you want to start?
Yeah, I have strong opinions on this one actually, because I actually hate the whole like dear first name, let me tell you about what's going on at your company, type of thing. That's not personalization. And we actually do very, very, very little of that type of thing. I actually think a better personalized experience is more about reaching people in the places they're going to educate themselves with a message that's very relevant to what they're looking for in the moment they're looking for it. So personalization is more about the relevance of the experience that you create, as opposed to being able to say, hey, I know your name because I'm creepy. The marketing mecca in my view is to be able to create an experience that feels incredibly specific and relevant and and unique to that person without it feeling personal. Like being personalized is not the same as being personal, right? Achieving that at scale, which is very much the type of thing that a good sales team or a good BDR team would be doing. They'd be doing manual research. They'd reach out to somebody in a moment because they were doing a thing and present them with an interesting piece of information that they know to be relevant or suspect is relevant. And we just need to take that same type of experience and scale it.
Well said. Brian?
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of being relevant. So sort of just an example, because it was something we did recently, is we sort of pulled down the earnings statements from all the companies that are out there and sort of what were the key themes that came out of them, and then we use that to sort of inform an outreach play. Relevant because you now know what are the key priorities for the company. You can then sort of speak to them and tie in sort of your offering. And it's not just about, as Leslie said, sort of the words being personal. It's you can see based on sort of all the data that's out there, these channels tend to work best for these individual people. They're more likely to respond to this versus that. Here's some real-time information. You should reach out now. And so I think those are really key and important things. And then tied back to what I had mentioned earlier, AI, again, it helps with the repetitive tasks and it helps with actually doing some of that personalization. But I do think you need to have the foundation of what are the key messages you want to get out into market that are sort of aligned with the general problems that are out there and sort of where your solution can be valuable. And then how do you sort of tweak and customize based on that, leveraging AI. And one of the things for ABM that I think is nice is I think a traditional ABM was sales had their static list, marketing had their static list. And then you went and did sort of these very bespoke one-off things. I think sort of the future of ABM or ABX is much more, what are sort of the key criteria that we care about from an account and sort of an individual point of view? And then how are you allowing sort of the data and your sort of systems and tools to take AI and allow you to then reach out at scale and adjust and automate based on sort of the guidelines that you provide.
And John?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll start by saying I would say I'm generally bearish on using AI to create personalized content. I mean, I've seen every one of the major sales engagement tools, release hey, you can now have AI write the emails for you. I just got access to the built-in Google AI in my Gmail yesterday, and I played with it to see it can write emails, and they're kind of garbage. so far. And I don't know if that technology is going to get that much better. There's a lack of voice, that's just inherent, I think, in that kind of content. So I think that is overhyped, is the let's create all these personalized emails at scale side of things. And I'm much more in Leslie's camp here, where, the single most important thing you want to personalize on is where is that person in their journey? Like if somebody is not looking to purchase right now and you start hitting them with all these, buy messages, that's like proposing on the first date. Whereas if somebody is actually in market and looking to buy, there's definitely things that they want to know. And if you're all like, hey, check out my best practices ebook, that's also doesn't, resonate. So just, not so much on the mass creation of content, and definitely on the be more personalized, not personal.
Good. Bob, why don't we see the results then from the poll?
All right, the answer is. So targeted messaging, how effective is your AI currently being utilized? 26% not at all, slightly effective, 39% moderate, 24. Very effective, 4 people, that's good. And 1 is extremely effective. And again, if someone out there is, if that's you, if you want to chime in on your chat or raise your hand or something like that, it'd be interesting to hear what you're doing. But most people are slightly effective.
Yeah, very interesting. Any comments from the panelists on these results? Any surprises?
Maybe just in addition, the leader of Wharton's neuroscience initiative, he with someone else published some research that found that at the end of the day, brands, you're actually wanting to create like a collective perception of your brand. And so there's actually some like potential drawbacks if you're too specific in how you sort of target a message to individual companies. And there's actually some value in actually that consistency of perception that it's sort of reinforcing across. So you can tweak within that. And that's why I think sort of your overarching messages are important. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting maybe counterpoint to some of the over focus on personalization.
I was surprised back on the survey, the poll response about the level of sophistication around targeting. I expected this audience, people who would join this webinar, to be maybe more average, more sophisticated on average. But it really actually does connect. I mean, we ran a survey recently about the state of go-to-market, and one of the things we found is only 37% of our responders said they were even using intent data today. So, I tend to think, maybe as a vendor, I'm living this world where I think this stuff is just like, well, of course, everybody is using this data and this AI to sort of target their accounts. And I think like what the poll just showed is actually what is actually out there, which is that people are not as sophisticated as we maybe sometimes assume. Leslie.
Yeah, well, first I'll address that, which is, yeah, of course, like everybody's going to be at different stages of maturity when it comes to the adoption of all of these things due to many factors, the size of their business, the state of maturity, of their own go-to-market motions, the level of autonomy their marketing teams have to try these things that might be new, and oftentimes how the marketing and sales teams interact with one another and how tightly integrated they are can impact all of these things. So the results do not surprise me at all. With respect to using AI to generate content, while I am hopeful that we will someday get to a place where we can generate bespoke-ish content kind of in real time in response to what I call the precision demand marketing model, which is kind of like reach the right people in the right watering holes at the right stage of their journey. Being able to also address that with custom messaging might have a future, maybe. I also agree with Brian that there's also value in consistency in messaging, so you don't want to go too far afield there. However, where I do think there are immediate current day opportunities to leverage generative AI with respect to content is just in your ability to scale the production of content in its many, many forms. So when you think about all the content that needs to come out of a marketing organization, there's long form content, there's there's what you might call anchor content, there's blogs, there's content to support email marketing and social media and, prospecting emails. All of these things are things that take a lot of time if you're not just creating it really well and thoughtfully, but constantly curating it and optimizing it over time. And so I hope to see, and we're starting to pilot this now with Avanti, is that all of these use cases that I just described can be ways to really scale the creation of actual copywriting. There needs to be human intervention. And then I would, in an ideal world, we'd see that go a step further. And not only does that engine initiate the content the first time, but it also gets integrated into your content activation channels. Like, if you're sending emails through Eloqua or Marketo, it's seeing how people are responding to those, and it's using that to learn how to do it better the next time.
I guess maybe a test question relative to the comments. Within my team, we write emails on behalf of sales. We have sales write a lot of emails, as an example. Those are not always well written, and they're written by individuals. Many times, sort of our CEO will see something, he's like, "How did we let that get out the door?" And so it's not always a perfect state that you're comparing AI to. I think there's a practical reality that not everyone actually generates wonderful content. But I mean, we definitely do. So Henry, our CEO, he has a very strong voice, like a very particular voice. And we have tried to train our model on Henry's voice and tried to draft content, and then we tweak from it. And we've actually found it to be pretty effective at capturing his voice. And so I think there are ways to do that, or from like an ad perspective, getting you started on, hey, this is sort of the messaging pillars we're trying to work within. Can you help us create some ads? Obviously, you don't want to just necessarily put them directly into the wild yet, but I do think, to what Leslie said, it can give you a really good starting spot to build from.
So as long as we're staying on the content generation topic, I'll share the advice that I've shared with my team ad nauseum, right? Which is, GPT, the T stands for transformer. It's a transformer and not a creator, which means it works really well when you give it something and you say, transform this, make it shorter, make it punchier, turn this into a LinkedIn post, turn this into a social, like you're transforming. It's really good at that. Right? When you say, write me a blog post about X, you don't give it anything to work with, you're going to get crap, because that's not transforming, that's creating. So I think it's just, the more we keep that in mind, the better results we're going to get in the content creation side.
Yeah, great point.
Okay. Bob, maybe we could throw up the poll for segmentation as we bridge to that. All right, so while our audience is answering that, and by the way, for those of you who are asking, yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for replay within the next week or two. So as we think about segmentation, how do you think AI can help us in automating the process of identifying high value accounts? Are there things that we don't get that are available today with software that AI might help us find some additional information? I mean, John, you had mentioned that in your own survey, for example, people aren't even using intent data. So how can AI help with that?
All right, well, I think you sort of had two questions there. One was, I think, segmentation, and the other one is sort of finding high value accounts. But they are connected for the exact reason that Leslie just shared, which is perhaps the most important attribute to segment on is journey stage, right? Where is the account in that journey? And AI can be very effective to predict where an account is in its journey stage, because we can actually start to learn the pattern of behaviors that accounts tend to exhibit when they move from one stage to the next. Not to overgeneralize, but probably the single biggest behavioral pattern that the AI tends to find is a sudden increase in the number of people from the account to the buying committee that start doing something. Whether it's visiting your website, even if they're anonymous, or reading articles about your industry out on the open web, which is what is known as intent data. But the thing that tends to signify this account is moving from the awareness stage into the consideration stage is when you see a spike in the number of people, doing that. AI is really good at learning that, and AI is really good at finding that, kind of at accounts. And then you can use that to segment your messaging so that you'll be more relevant. lots more we could say on it, but I definitely want to, you know, let Leslie and Brian in.
Brian?
I agree with John, and I mean, many ways it's just sort of taking the conversation we had on targeting a step further, which is sort of adding in a little bit, maybe more information, or looking at it a little bit differently to figure out sort of like, now that you're knowing who you want to go after, like what type of outreach do you want to do? And we talked about sort of the content piece. So I think it's kind of in between the two conversations we just had, is how do you take who you want to go, who you're thinking about as your entire pie, and then like the what you want to do on the output, and it's then informing sort of what collection of outreach do you want to do. So it's, I think similar things, just looked at a little bit differently.
And Leslie, before you answer, everyone that is putting your questions in the general chat, thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, if you could put it in the Q&A area, it will allow us to track it a little bit easier. So thank you for that. But it's great questions. I'm going to try and get to them soon. Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of throwback to what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is exactly what these guys have said. Now, in our world, in Avanti's world, and I assume this will be true for some people, it's not just about identifying the new companies we might want to pursue at any given time. In fact, the majority of our focus is actually on our install base. We have about 40,000 customers and about 66 products in our portfolio. So we have a huge opportunity to cross-sell within our install base, but it's really overwhelming for our salespeople to figure out, how do we target, what do we cross-sell to any given account or set of people within an account at any given time. And so using machine learning tools that help you learn patterns of behaviors that are indicative of in-market signals for one solution versus a different solution, even within an install base, is really, really valuable for us.
Great. Bob, can we see the results from the segmentation poll?
Pretty split between moderate and not involved at all.
Yeah, even less sophisticated than on the targeting.
Yeah.
Probably no surprises there, I would imagine.
And that actually surprises me. I'll be honest. I kind of thought that, you know, intent tools have been around long enough that they would have become more deeply integrated into the account-based prioritization and segmentation motions.
What about you, Brian? Any surprise?
I mean, I think it goes to the earlier conversation that I think, and we talked to a lot of our customers about this as well, relative to really leveraging data across channels in an automated fashion. Most are sort of still in the fairly nascent stage of trying to figure out how to get all your data in the same place and then start to use it across channels. And so, yeah, not particularly surprising. I think a reflection of where some of us from a sort of a software and services point of view are a little bit ahead and painting the North Star, which is great for some customers, but a lot of people are just trying to get the basics up and they need help on sort of the initial steps.
All right, why don't we move on to analytics? And Bob, if you could put up the survey for that. So while we're putting that poll up, we've talked a lot already where AI can help analyze customer journey stage and where people are at, but what are some of the other ways that AI can help in understanding and analyzing either account or customer behavior that will be more helpful for marketing and sales organizations? Leslie, you want to start?
Sure. So I kind of think of this from an analytics in a few different ways. There's a few different ways to slice and dice this. There's predictive analytics, which is more of the kind of machine learning stuff that I just talked about. And we're using that to kind of feed our real-time precision demand engine. And you can do that to run static analysis too, like look at, okay, within the accounts we're looking at, what's their profile fit, and you know, if you've got lookalike analysis in your predictive analytics, that's all useful. Then there's kind of another flavor of analytics, which is comparing what your business model is saying, like, you know, what your CRM tells you is going to happen versus what a machine learning model thinks is actually likely to occur. Those would be things like, you know, forecast predictability and stuff like that with tools like Clary and whatnot. And we're kind of we are doing that latter bit of it, but it's kind of running as a shadow too. It's not currently driving the decisions that we're making around our business, but we're looking at how those compare to what actually plays out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah. So building on what Leslie said, so I mean, certainly what I hear in talking to customers is most companies or as very few companies have sales and marketing across their channels working together in concert with their sort of customer success motion, and everyone is basing their activities on the same data sets and working in concert. And so there's a lot of sort of division of like the data that people are using, the actions that they're taking. And so I think the opportunity for going after customers with AI is high, requiring you get all the right data in sort of a consistent spot. But I think the opportunities are some of the things that John and I were chatting about earlier was there's a lot of unstructured data in the interactions you have. And so you can start to try and take those and pull those and better inform your activities that you couldn't do prior to AI just because it couldn't take those large sort of data sets. So like the things like listening to conversations and trying to automate on those. And then less AI, but more just analytics is how do you just take large amounts of data and be able to sort of identify trends. And I think there's still a lot of opportunity there. Again, being able to have all of your data in a similar system or connected systems so that you can understand all the touch points, what's working and what's not.
John?
Those are really good answers. So I'm going to sort of go in a slightly different direction. And just like two areas where I'm thinking AI will sort of indirectly affect us and kind of our analytics. The first one is today, if you're an analyst and you want to run a report, you have to go into the tool and use the graphical user interface to sort of structure the report and, get the dashboard you want or however. And we've already seen companies, in creating kind of chat style interfaces. HubSpot had a great demo of ChatSpot, where they're sort of, like, hey, don't use the CRM UI, just type it in. What do you want? Give me a report that shows, code attainment by territory, segmented by high intent versus low intent. Boom, you get the report. So I think that's one thing where we're going to see AI, change is really just the user interface that we're on. The other one is just mostly a little, out there. But I think we're at the very earliest stages where buyers are using AIs to support their purchasing process. We've seen examples of this in consumer already. People going to ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got 2 days in Naples, Italy. What should I do? And it comes back with a list of recommendations that are not half bad, right? We're not that far where people are going to also go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the best ABM software out there? So what this does is as marketers, we're going to have to start thinking not just about search engine optimization, where we learned how to hack the Google algorithm. We're going to actually have to start thinking about AI optimization, right? So that we can start to tune the AIs that are out there to, give the recommendations we want where possible. And I think just like SEO launched a whole set of analytics, I think we'll see kind of this kind of AI optimization creating a whole set of analytics as well.
All right.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
I can see ChatGPT is like the next G2 crowd.
That's good. That's a good quote.
Wow. That's pretty telling too, I think.
The audience says, so if you can see it, analytics, it's again early on the curve. Never is the highest ranking at 44%, rare at 23%, and sometimes at 26%.
Yeah, I think that probably piggybacks on some of the other things we saw earlier with people using the intent data to track some of that stuff. So a lot of opportunities for sure, I think, for people to just embrace AI in some very basic, pragmatic ways. Fourth and final topic for today is data management. We did touch on it briefly with some of your early comments, but would love to get the survey up for that. And the question I'd like to ask the panel while the audience is taking the survey is, what would you say are some of the best practices for managing and utilizing data with AI in your ABX approach? So Brian, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, so something you can, a couple of ways you can leverage it. So and this was brought up earlier, I mean, you can use AI as part of sort of your data cleaning and deduping and actually sort of looking at your data at scale to sort of recognize anomalies and either highlight those or potentially fix them. So I think that's something that you can do. And then as part of that sort of collapsing data together, I think one of the things that a lot of companies struggle with is they have such disparate data sources, and there's just a lot of work to try and pull them together and figure out the rules for what does what governs. And that's another area for AI to play a role.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've already hit, the sort of, augmenting your data, from unstructured. I think another one, which we sort of briefly touched on, is the ability to find net new contacts that you should be adding to your buying groups. That's a very manual process today that AI, I think, can streamline for you.
And Leslie?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what we've already discussed, frankly. There's this balance between using AI to get your data to a state where it can fuel good AI, right? It's kind of this cyclical effect. And I think that the value in using a tool like AI, as opposed to these kind of one-time really big manual lift efforts, is that it is allowing you to keep up with what's constantly changing. And that's probably the reason you would do it that way, as opposed to invest in an AI-based tool that allows you to do that, as opposed to kind of like a one-time cleanup effort, and then you have to do it again next year.
Okay. Bob, let's see the results. A little bit more distributed.
Yeah, getting more into the high impact than the other ones.
I think this has been around longer, to be honest, right? Using these types of tools to clean up and deduplicate your data is something that's probably been, it's more tried and true. It's a space people are more comfortable with. And it's also one that is less often owned by marketing, just in reality. It's more often owned by like a revenue ops or an IT team.
Good point. All right, we're going to bridge to the audience questions now. The first one is from Melanie Kennedy, and this has been the subject of a lot of debate, of course, with the rise of LLM. Is AI going to actually become sentient and replace human beings on marketing teams, and how quickly might that happen? So, Brian, you want to start?
I think my hope is it shifts away some of the mundane, repetitive tasks so that we can focus on more value-added activities. Sort of over time, what technology has done, certainly in the long term, is shifted where we focus our efforts. So there could be sort of a near term where it makes some of the jobs that we have redundant, but over time it allows that sort of capacity to shift into other areas and then accelerate productivity. So I think that's my long-term perspective.
John?
Two thoughts. The first one is just about, hey, is AI going to take our jobs? Chris Penn has a line that I really, really like, which is that, AI is not going to take your job, but some other marketer who knows how to use AI better than you might take your job. So make sure you're learning how to use this tool. Now, that's separate to me, though, from when you said AI becomes sentient. I'm extremely bullish and excited about AI and its opportunity to help us in marketing. And I'm terrified about the prospect of AGI, artificial generalized intelligence. And so, there's all these calls out there for we need to sort of regulate and monitor. I think we need to really be really worried about like fake content, and there needs to be watermarking on AI created images so we can know what's fake and not fake. And we do need to really be thinking carefully about AGI, but that's getting way out of the realm of just marketing and into kind of existential human race stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, we're supposed to be change agents in marketing anyway, so why not, right? Go ahead, Leslie.
Well, I'm not gonna touch that at the AGI thing, but I will say that I totally agree that the question isn't will it replace our job, but how will it change our jobs and how does it change the skills and capabilities that we need to have? I mean, a really, really good marketers are good at writing really good briefs, right? Because you need to be able to brief the people who are helping you make that campaign possible. The Chat GPT prompt is the new campaign brief, and you need to know how to do it, and you need to know how to do it well, and you need to know how to do it from multiple different tools, because they're the way that those tools are going to be able to receive and process information that you put into it will be different. So there's definitely a whole new set of skills that marketers need to learn, and I think it's going to be a combination of every marketer needs to have a certain amount of generalized skill, and there's going to be an emergence of specialized marketers, kind of like how marketing automation emerged this specialty role. I do think that there's going to be marketing specialties that are focused on AI.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Deidre Hudson. What tools can specifically be used for segmenting the audience? John?
Well, again, we have to define, there's lots of dimensions you can think about segmenting your audience. To maybe overly simplify here, I'll just give a couple, right? So I've talked about journey stage. Where are they in their journey? I think that's the most important one to segment on. You can use demand-based for that. You can use other ABM platforms for that. Firmographics is a great, just by industry and by size, those are, good tools to segment on. So there's lots of vendors where you can buy your firmographic data. We talked earlier about technographic data. What technologies do they have installed base? Or do they have installed, right? That's going to be another segmentation, right? When we're marketing, we're going to market to somebody who uses Salesforce differently than somebody who uses Microsoft Dynamics. And it kind of goes on from there. So, I mean, it's you ask tools, I'm answering data, but I think that's probably actually more relevant here.
Okay.
I'm unbiased. So how about I answer with tool data, since these
Great.
guys can't without introducing their bias. Demand-based, definitely a great tool. Zoom Info, also a good tool. 6 Sense is another tool you've heard Bombora mentioned. There's plenty of technologies out there. And the one that's right for you is going to kind of depend upon the state of your business and what you need, because they all bring different strengths and players to it. So since I don't have a horse in that particular race, I thought it would be best for it to come from me.
Very, very politically correct of you. Yes. Brian, anything there?
I think Leslie did a good job.
Okay. Next question is from Gary Verster. How are we actually defining AI for ABX? Are we assuming that a model which factors in data sets, intent, engagement, et cetera, is AI, or is it much more than that?
Again, I'll start by reminding everybody that, AI is, applying any kind of learning technique that mimics the way humans learn to help a machine learn, right? And in particular, machine learning is a subset of AI. So when we're talking about, any kind of machine learning, including predictive analytics, right, that is a subset of AI. And that's what we've been using for years, in ABX, whether it's to find intent, or in market accounts, or to set bids for, ad impressions and so on. So, yeah, I mean, I am defining AI here as any use of any sort of generalized learning approach to support our ABX efforts.
And I agree with John's definition, and I would say that AI is used very loosely to largely encompass analytics. And so I think one of the things that I do think some people probably get intimidated by the idea of, well, we have to create this really complex AI model. If you're not already sort of leveraging data and doing analytics on that data to help you inform decision making, like, you should definitely start there. And then either if you're building it or leveraging other platforms and capabilities to do true AI, then you can sort of advance beyond that. But yeah, I do think there's sort of a liberal usage of AI at the moment.
Leslie?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should be careful. AI for ABX is not a thing. It's not like a specialized model or particular baked methodology. It is simply a way in which we might leverage a variety of tools that have a wide range of AI capabilities to further our account-based objectives to make our B2B marketing better.
Okay.
Let's see, just remind me of something. Gartner just recently put out some research that I thought was interesting, and they were talking about ABM, but actually the top channels they talked about were sales channels using sort of marketing data. And so I think it's really important for us to think about holistically, what are we doing across sales and marketing to effectively identify and then go after accounts, and not just limit it to sort of ABM true marketing activities, but across departments.
Okay. Next question from Keith Caskey. Do you foresee marketing organizations having an AI specialist on your team that is tasked with prompts and such? And if so, what do you anticipate will be their job role, content segmentation, etc.?
Well, I kind of alluded to this already. I think that there is a future that this may exist. I think that a first stage for companies that are just stepping into this space, and this is true of us too, is to identify a small tiger team of people who have an interest or an affinity in this type of area that represent different parts of your marketing team, so they can kind of represent different potential use cases, you know, and learn. And then as you get a handle on what does it take to be successful here, you'll get a much better sense of whether you need truly dedicated people or whether this is a capability you can democratize across your team.
Yeah, I'd say, just building on what Leslie said, I think for any type of capability in an organization, many times when you it's a scarce resource or you don't have the competency, you start with a sort of limited subset that is potentially centralized, that helps figure out how to do it and standardize. And then over time, hopefully, if it's a valuable skill set, you then figure out how to distribute it across the organization, so you're not dependent on just a select few to try and do something.
I'm going to answer that yes, and you know, in as much as, you know, as I said earlier, every marketer needs to be learning how to use this stuff. You know, this is a tool, and like, you know, you don't graduate from even junior high without sort of knowing how to use a calculator to help you in your math, right? And so, you know, I think, you know, you wouldn't, or a spread, you know, and then later on in your life, you learn how to use a spreadsheet to help you with your math, right? So I think every person in every company is going to be using these tools, right? And then, you know, there will also be the subset that is like, how do I apply this tool to specialized problems like scoring accounts? And that might be more of a center of excellence.
Okay. Next question is from Adarsh Pillai. Will human touch be eradicated in customer buyer journey with the use of AI in the near future?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. And I would say we have seen a general trend to people are doing more and more sort of research prior to interfacing with a person, and then interfacing with a person when they then want to. And I don't think that's necessarily like an AI-based reality. That's just a function of people like to be able to access information on their own progress without having to necessarily be sold to right away. AI might facilitate that a little bit, but I don't think it's AI is the driving factor.
I would agree with that. I think in purchase processes that would be that seamless, where they don't require true human intervention, those are the kind of things that are already being answered through e-commerce type solutions. When you've got true enterprise sales or things that require, you know, proposals to be delivered and quotes, and, you know, working through a negotiation process, might even have a partner involved, I don't see how AI will replace that.
Jennifer Shannon asks, do you guys have suggestions for resource hubs or vendors for offering training and education for ABM teams and AI?
I wish I did.
Well,
so if I'll just say one thing, you know, which is, and then, you know, perhaps, you know, let's say something more useful to say. This is moving and changing so fast. You know, like I decided one day, I was like, you know, I write these definitive guides, you know, I was like, I'm going to go write the definitive guide to AI and B2B. And after about a day of working on it, I realized I'm not going to do that. This is moving and changing too fast that by the time I wrote anything, it's going to be outdated. So, you know, again, there may be courses that I want to hear from Leslie, but I would at the same time say, like, right now we're in the phase where like, you've just got to be like staying on top of this stuff, you know, because it's moving so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something truly centralized, I actually do subscribe to the MACON or the Marketing AI Institute newsletter. They've got some interesting stuff, and they have a podcast. And I have found that to be pretty interesting stuff. What it's not going to give you is the real tactical, practical, hands-on. Here's what to do. It's more about trends in the industry and what's coming and policy, what policymakers are doing and things. Really, I think that this is going to come down to just grassroots, get your hands on some things and try some stuff and find communities of people who are doing the same that are like you and your business that where you can bounce ideas off of and share.
Yeah, they're actually having a conference again this month in Cleveland.
Yes.
AI Institute. So for those of you that can get out to Cleveland, it's a good agenda. There's a lot of training on it and some good birds of a feather kind of thing. So I think my business partner is planning on going. So check it out. Brian, any suggestions there?
Nothing to add to the comments.
Okay. So Akshata Fernando has a question. Does AI help improve deliverability and optimize email outreach?
It can. I mean, you need a tool that is specifically designed for that. I mean, that's the bottom line there, right? You need a tool that's designed to analyze your email performance, the deliverability of it, and can give you that type of insight.
Yeah, I mean, never bounces one. There are others that are out there, but yeah, it's definitely a capability that exists.
Okay. So as we saw from a lot of the surveys, the attendees today are predominantly in early stages of on their AI journey, as well as even some of their ABX journey. What advice would you give a company that's looking to integrate AI into its ABX approach for the first time?
Okay, I'll go first. I think your goal shouldn't be how do I use AI? Let's start there. What you need to do is you need to look at what are the goals and priorities of my business and where do I potentially have gaps and that might be able to be solved by different types of AI. And remember, there's lots of different types. There's, machine learning models, there's generative AI. You've got a whole range of things. So don't look for a problem for a piece of technology you want to get your hands on. Look for problems your business has that might conceivably be solved by a piece of technology, and then start small.
Well said.
Yeah,
Strategy before technology.
yeah. But John, anything else you were going to say? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just tying into what we said earlier. So agree, you need to figure out what you're wanting to solve for. Then I would recommend making decisions based on data. So you want to have robust data and try and pull it together as much as you can. And then use that data through analytics and potentially AI to inform decisions. And then facilitate processes that you're already wanting to run. But yeah, you shouldn't start with, hey, I want to leverage AI. How can I do it?
Okay. And the final question comes from our host, Bob. He'd like to know, with regard for our vision of where this is heading and any final words of wisdom. So for me personally, I agree. I think it's changing rapidly. Let's not make the same mistakes we made with all the other automation waves, over the last 10 or 15 years. AI is just another form of technology. I think if we're going out to buy technology in the hopes that we're going to AI our business or fix something, then we're already going down the wrong path. I think it still comes back to people, process, and figuring out what are we trying to accomplish, what do we need to do, and how can AI help improve those areas as a value-added tool, not as a replacement for it. But I do think the sky's the limit. I think we're going to see innovation in ways that we can't even possibly imagine. I mean, this is one of those once in a generational type of things that we saw with the internet, that we saw with the smartphone. Brian, your thoughts?
Maybe tied to where I started my comments is when you're trying to figure out what are the problems you're trying to solve, I think you should consider what types of data did you wish that you had in the past used to inform that decision making, and could you pull that data, structured or unstructured, together using AI in ways that you haven't in the past? Are there things you're doing that are very repetitive that you would like to be able to not do? And I think AI and can be helpful. And then where it makes sense, where do you want to try and personalize, and can it help you at least with the initial stages of that? And then potentially over time, take on a bigger role. Maybe the last thing that I didn't mention as much is I do think there's opportunities for prescriptive direction. So, hey, focus on these accounts, think about these contacts, that should be something that comes out of sort of this evolution.
Okay. John?
For me, I would just, just to try to say something different, just remind everybody that, AI is just the broad field of computer science that aims to mimic human intelligence. Anything that sort of, looks to learn from data, recognize patterns and so on. And as such, AI is not new here. And we've been using AI for years. We just call it machine learning or predictive analytics. And so, like, don't be afraid of it. And, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and Leslie.
I don't know that I have much more to say that these guys haven't already said. I mean, it's here. I don't think it's going anywhere. It should be making our jobs easier. It's an extension of that which we need to do as a marketing team. So think about it in the context of what's your strategy, where are your gaps, and how might you solve those with AI capabilities and others. And then the other bit I would say is people should not be afraid or resistant to AI because they think it will take their job. That's not the right attitude. You're going to scale one way or another, and it's going to be here one way or the other. So embrace it.
Awesome. Leslie, John, Brian, thank you so much for sharing your great wisdom. And Bob, thanks for putting this all together.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye.